The main thing that we think about when we think about Abraham Lincoln usually isn't the fact that he was extremely depressed. In his 2005 book, Lincoln's Melancholy, H.W. Wolf Hall decided to write about Lincoln having an extreme melancholy and thinking about him dealing with depression and suicidal thoughts leading up to him becoming a senator for Illinois and also him becoming a neglectful father in his eyes as he watched his country literally kill each other over a war. Abraham Lincoln dealt with a lot of depressing thoughts, figuring out how to deal with the responsibilities and burdens he was given, which directly ties into today's quote. To be or not to be, that is the question from Hamlet. And we can take this quote to mean that we have to find a way to question what we do with our lives. And this is something we can agree with, because we can take this to see that we have to figure out whether living is the good fight to fight. And we can dissect this by first figuring out how we make our lives have purpose, and second, the consequences of just questioning. But when we first look into the consequences of our actions, we can take a look into the life of J. Dilla, and second, the life of Oliver Sacks and his book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. But when we first look into the life of J. Dilla, the fact is that he was a producer in the early 90s and 2000s that wanted to integrate himself into hip-hop. But by the time of his 2006 album, Donuts, he died of a rare blood marrow cancer. And the fact is that the bone marrow that ended up killing him laid on a legacy, not only in 2015 with his uncle making a donut shop after his album, but also some of his producing equipment being housed in the National Sciences for the Education and Culture of African Americans. The fact is that J. Dilla's equipment and his passion was integrated into a museum in the Smithsonian that was directly infused for his people's achievement. And the fact is that J. Dilla, even though he had a limited time, took action instead of questioning himself, made good and thoughtful music. Second, we can take a look into the life of Oliver Sacks and his 1970 book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. Oliver Sacks heard the story of a man in the 1970s that would go up to his wife and try to unscrew her head and try to use it as a hat. And he wanted to try to find a way to what would really lead into this, and he later figured out that he had a rare form of schizophrenia. The fact is that Oliver Sacks took a strange case in human behavior and wanted to try to find a way, instead of questioning whether it be any other forms of mental illnesses, actually wanted to take action and diagnose somebody that was struggling. Much like how Abraham Lincoln or Hamlet did, try to find a way to dissect what is good in life and what we should do to eventually have a purpose. Second, we can take a look at how we have to find a way to question life and what happens when we stay too long in that questioning stage. And first, we can take a look into the Samuel Beckett play Waiting for Godot, and second, the Showtime series Billions. But when we first take a look at Waiting for Godot, it talks about two people waiting in the desert for somebody named Godot, and by the end of the play, they're right where they're starting, just sitting there and talking about whether they should leave or continue to stay there. Many people dissect this as a play meaning about the effects of the Cold War and even another effective of mental illness. But the fact is that they didn't make a true and effective decision and are still debating and still talking, and it holds them back because Godot possibly will never come to them in the desert, and it would be better for them just to go back home. Second, when we look at Billions, it talks about a CEO fighting with a legislative congressman in Boston. And the fact is that many aspects of game theory are weighed in with the decisions to try to one-up each other. If they both go to try to cut themselves over the fact is that they are extremely competitive, they might end up dooming both of them throughout this. But if they figure out a way to integrate game theory by finding a way to compromise when they have to, but still have that competitive edge to challenge each other, it highlights the fact is that humans are complex creatures. And every decision that we make is integrated in what we take into effect of challenging other people and realizing that we just have to step back for a bit. And it's a question that we always have to be asking. In today's quotation of to be or not to be, that is a question from Hamlet. We take this to mean that we have to find a way to debate whether living is the good fight. Whether first figuring out what to do with our purpose in life, or second, finding a way to realize that we have to eventually make a decision and stop waiting because we might not have the responsibilities that Abraham Lincoln had, but we all have that choice to actually make our